But I was the only one on the porch, tangled in a busted porch light she'd asked me to look at. Wires out like nerves, everything buzzing quietly. I didn't even knock. I just waited until she noticed me. Ella. She's my neighbor. 3 doors down. 35. Maybe 36? Hard to tell. She has that kind of stillness around her face that makes time feel hesitant. I was fixing her light because she asked if I knew anything about electricity. I didn't. I watched one YouTube video and told her I did. I think she knew I was lying. She let me try anyway. When she opened the door that night, she looked like she hadn't slept. Jacket thrown over a long t-shirt, no shoes. Her voice was quieter than usual. There was a guy outside my window last night. She didn't ask me to come in. She just stepped aside. Inside was colder than I expected. Like she didn't turn the heat on unless she had to. I smelled coffee and rain on concrete. One lamp was on, barely lighting the small living room where she had a single armchair, a folded blanket, and an empty wine glass on the floor. She sat down and wrapped her arms around her knees. He tried the back door. I saw the handle move. I didn't know what to say. I stood awkwardly near the bookshelf, hands in my pockets like a teenager. I could feel her watching me in the reflection of the dark window. She didn't ask if I thought she was overreacting. She didn't need to. I believed her. Then, this is the part that stuck. She looked at me like she was trying to measure something in her own chest, like she was checking her own boundaries and finding them porous. "Can he stay a few nights?" she asked aloud, like she was rehearsing. Then looked at me. "I mean, can you stay? Just for a bit. I'll sleep fine if someone's here. What if the guy comes back?" I nodded too fast. "I'll sleep on the sofa." She exhaled in a way that wasn't relief. More like she'd opened a door that wasn't supposed to be opened. I stayed. That night, I tried to act like it was nothing, like I crashed at people's places all the time. I set my backpack by the wall and unfolded a blanket she gave me like I knew what I was doing. She hovered near the hallway, fingers curled under the sleeves of her sweater. "Thanks, Jude," she said. "Just for a few nights." I gave her a small smile. "Of course." She paused. And then, this tiny moment I can't stop replaying. She reached out to pass me a second pillow, and our fingers touched. Barely. But she didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. She looked at me then. Really looked. Not the way a neighbor looks at a neighbor. "You're not scared, are you?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost testing. I shook my head. "Not of that." She blinked, and for a second I thought she might say something. But instead, she turned and walked to her room. Slow, quiet steps, like she didn't want to wake something up. She didn't close her door. It's a weird thing, how quiet can feel louder than any argument. The house made all kinds of sounds that first night. Pipes shifting, the fridge kicking on, a tree outside brushing against the siding like fingers. I didn't sleep much. I laid there in the half-dark with one pillow behind my head and the other hugged against my chest like a shield. Her door stayed cracked open. I could see the pale slice of hallway light glowing against her bedroom wall. I wondered if she was awake. I didn't move. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not like this. I met Ella 3 weeks ago. Her ex-husband had just come by to pick up a box. I only saw him from my porch. Tall, fast hands, impatient body language. He rang her doorbell twice, then banged once. She answered like she'd been expecting worse. I remember thinking, she looks like someone who never lets herself cry in front of people. The next day, she asked about the porch light. She's not warm, not in the way people usually mean it. She doesn't smile unless she means it, and that's rare. But she listens, closely, like she records things in her head in case you forget who you are later. The second night I stayed, she made tea. Not for both of us, just herself, but she brought the mug over and sat on the arm of the couch. She was barefoot, Her toenails were chipped navy blue, and she kept flexing one foot like she couldn't quite get warm. "You don't have to keep doing this," she said without looking at me. "Doing what?" "Sleeping out here, like I'm some charity case." I let out a breath. "You're not. That's not what I think." She gave a half nod, but it didn't land. I could feel something shift, some old shame slipping into the room and taking a seat between us. Her fingers curled around the mug tighter. "He used to make me feel crazy," she said low. "If I double-checked the locks, if I didn't want to leave the windows cracked at night." I started pretending I wasn't scared, just so he wouldn't act like I was broken. I didn't say anything. She turned her head slightly, eyes searching me, like she needed to see how I'd carry what she just handed me. "I don't think you're broken," I said. She looked at me longer than she should have. Long enough that my heart started to thud in a stupid, obvious rhythm. And then she reached out, slow, like she wasn't even sure she was going to, and touched my arm, just above the wrist. "Would it be too weird if you stayed a little longer?" she asked. I swallowed, tried to smile. "Not too weird." She didn't move her hand. I should have looked away. I didn't. What I wanted to say, "You could ask me to stay forever and I would," stayed right behind my teeth. I think she saw it anyway. She stood up suddenly. "Good night, Jude." This time she closed the door. But not all the way. The third night she didn't make tea. She made dinner. It was a quiet gesture: pasta, salad, 2 plates. She didn't ask if I liked onions. She just made it how she liked it. That told me more than anything she could have said. She sat across from me at her small table, one leg pulled under her, the other swinging slightly, barefoot again. "You don't have to be polite," she said, watching me chew. "If it sucks, say it." I smiled, mouth still full. "It's good. Better than anything I've made." "That's a low bar, though." She smirked, then winced. "Sorry. That sounded meaner out loud." "It didn't," I said, shaking my head. "It sounded like you." She looked at me then, her face softening in a way I wasn't ready for. Her lip caught between her teeth. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't trust herself to say it. So I filled the space. "I told my roommate I'd be out for a couple nights. He thinks I'm pet sitting." Ella tilted her head. "Do you have a pet?" "No. I just panic lie when I don't know how to explain something." Her laugh came out light, involuntary. "You're weird. I get that a lot." The moment stretched. That quiet again. That humming tension neither of us acknowledged directly. Like we were both keeping something pressed between our tongues and the roofs of our mouths. Then a knock. Sharp. Unexpected. At her front door. She froze. Eyes wide, hand halfway to her glass. "Do you want me to?" I started, already halfway to standing. She held up a hand. "No. Stay." The knock came again. Firmer this time. She walked slowly to the door. I moved toward the hallway just enough to see her unlock it. Then, "Oh, hi." Her voice had changed. Flat. Cold. I couldn't hear the other voice. Just a male murmur, low and casual. Her ex, maybe? A neighbor? I backed up. Out of sight. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I couldn't not listen. "You can't just show up here," she said, sharper now. A pause. "No. I don't care what you thought. You're not coming in." Then the door closed. Hard. She stood there for a second, back to the door, breathing like she'd just run 5 blocks. Her head dropped forward, one hand still on the doorknob. I stepped toward her before I thought better of it. "Ella." She turned, not startled, just tired. I didn't ask who it was. She shook her head once and said quietly, "He used to come back when he got bored, or drunk, or nostalgic." My jaw clenched. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I shoved them into my pockets. Then she crossed the room. She stopped right in front of me, close enough that I could see the tiny scar under her right eye. the place her lipstick had worn off from pressing her lips together all evening. Her fingers brushed my chest. She didn't seem to realize she'd done it. "You're younger," she said suddenly, like the words just dropped out of her mouth without permission. "You shouldn't be here." I swallowed hard. "But I am." She looked at me like she was weighing something too heavy to hold. Then she whispered, "Do you want to be?" I didn't answer. Not with words. I kept expecting the air between us to cool down. Instead, it kept tightening, like a pulled thread that hadn't snapped yet. I stayed the fourth night. No talk of how long anymore. No joke about being her guard dog. Just 2 plates on the table and her voice quieter than usual. I was watching her fingers more than her eyes. The way she rubbed her thumb across the rim of her glass. How she kept fiddling with the cuff of her sweater. After dinner, she sat beside me on the couch instead of the chair. That was new. Close enough that I could smell her conditioner. Citrus and something woodsy, like pine in the rain. We didn't say much. A movie played, but neither of us followed it. At one point, her knee bumped mine, and she didn't move away. Then, without turning to me, she asked, "Do you ever get the feeling you're doing something you'll regret later, but you still don't stop?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. "Yeah," I said, voice low. "Right now." She laughed, but it wasn't amused. It cracked somewhere halfway up her throat. "God, Jude." My name sounded heavy in her mouth, like a door she was afraid to walk through. Then she looked at me, fully this time. Her eyes didn't flinch. And I swear, in that moment I forgot how to swallow. "You're kind. And stupid. And kind again," she said, blinking slow. "And if I were a better person, I'd tell you to leave." "You're not a bad person, aren't I?" She looked at my mouth. Just briefly. Enough to make my skin go hot. "You're 26, she said. "You're supposed to fall for girls your age who write poems in their notebooks and cry at concerts. Not." She gestured at herself like she didn't have the words. "Whatever this is." I smiled, small. "That's not who I fall for." She let out a breath, not relief, not fear. Something tangled between the two. "Don't say things like that," she said, barely audible. "Please." "Why not?" "Because I want to believe you, and that's the problem." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was full of every word we hadn't said. Almost every inch of space we hadn't closed between us. And then I said something I hadn't meant to say out loud. "I think about touching you all the time." She flinched, just slightly, not because she was offended, but because it landed. And then she whispered back, "I know." That's when she reached out. Her hand rested on my chest again, where my heartbeat was louder than my voice. But she didn't kiss me. She just stared, right into me, and asked, "If I open that door, are you going to walk through it?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know if I'd ever come back out. She asked, "If I open that door, are you going to walk through it?" And I was about to answer, but before I could even shift forward, the sound hit us both at once. Her phone rang, shrill, ugly, loud in the small space between us. Ella's hand dropped from my chest. She stared at the glowing screen on the kitchen counter. Her expression drained, then hardened. "It's my sister," she said flatly. "She never calls this late." She didn't look at me as she crossed the room. Didn't say sorry. Just picked up the phone and walked into the hallway. The door didn't close behind her. Not all the way, so I could hear muffled pieces of the conversation. Her voice low, tense. "What do you mean he called you?" "No, he can't do that. That's not." "No, I didn't tell him. I wouldn't." Then, silence. Then, the door closed the rest of the way. I sat there, stomach crawling, every nerve on edge. Something had changed. I could feel it, thick in the air. When she came back out, maybe 10 minutes later, she didn't meet my eyes right away. She leaned against the doorframe like she was bracing for something, or bracing me. That was about my ex. I nodded, waiting. He found out you've been staying here. My chest tightened. How? He saw your name in my phone. That didn't make sense. She hadn't texted me. We hadn't even, unless… Wait, I said slowly. Your sister. What did she… Ella looked up then, finally. Her jaw tightened. She's your professor, Jude. I stared at her. No, she's… But the second she said it, I knew. Professor Langston. Intro to Visual Design. Fall semester a year ago. Blonde. Sharp. Same mouth. She must have shown Ella a photo. Or told a story. Or God. I'd drawn her once for an assignment. I remembered now. I'd said something about a sister who runs on caffeine and doesn't do small talk. Ella. It hit like a body blow. Not because it changed how I felt, but because suddenly this whole thing had a witness. I stood up, suddenly aware of my posture, my hands, my heartbeat. She's going to think… It doesn't matter what she thinks, Ella said, cutting me off. It matters what you do now. I stared at her, and she stared back, her expression unreadable. Not angry, just exposed. Like she'd been holding her breath for 4 days and wasn't sure what oxygen would do to her anymore. Do you still want to be here? She asked. I didn't know what to say. Not because I didn't feel it, but because now the weight of it was real. This wasn't just a story anymore. It was ours. And someone else knew. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch staring up at the ceiling like it might write the answer out in cracks. Ella didn't come back out after the phone call. Her door stayed shut. No light under it. And that meant something had shifted, not broken, not exactly, but shifted hard enough that we both felt it in our ribs. I got up around 6, quietly, made coffee, sat on the floor with my back against the kitchen cabinets, warm mug in my hands, thinking about how much of her I'd learned in 4 nights. How she keeps extra spoons in the freezer when she's anxious. How she triple checks the back door. How she says thank you when you hand her something small like a glass of water, but not when it's something bigger like staying. And I thought about how I felt stupid and young and reckless, but also alive. Like this was the first week in years I hadn't felt invisible. She came out barefoot, hair in a messy twist, wearing the same oversized sweater she always wore when she didn't want to be looked at. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Not angry, not cold, just raw. She said you were one of her favorites, Ella said quietly. That you made her laugh. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know, she added. Until last night. It wasn't some weird plan. I know that. She looked down, then stepped into the kitchen and sat on the floor across from me, her knees pulled to her chest. It felt like something we'd done 100 times, and also like something that would end us. I want to pretend none of it matters, she said. The age, the connection, what people would think. I want to just say yes to this. To you. I swallowed. My voice was stuck somewhere in my chest. But I've spent the last few years undoing a man who made me doubt myself. And you're not part of the damage, Jude. You're part of the quiet after. That's sacred to me. I sat with that. And then I said something I hadn't planned, but it came out true anyway. I don't want to be a detour, or a secret, or a story you'll only half tell. She blinked. Her lips parted like maybe she'd cry, but she didn't. Then don't be. It wasn't a confession. Not quite. It was permission. It was real. I moved toward her slowly, careful not to assume too much. We sat shoulder to shoulder, backs against the cabinets, our hands resting inches apart. Then she slid her pinky until it brushed mine. We sat there, silent, until she whispered, "Do you want to stay for breakfast?" I turned my head, looked at her. She was already looking at me. Only if I get to stay after that, too. I didn't leave. Not that morning. Not after breakfast. Not the day after either. Ella didn't ask me to stay forever. She didn't need to. The thing between us, whatever it was, stopped being fragile. It just was. Quiet, steady, imperfect, but real. Her sister, Professor Langston, called again once. Ella answered with the same even voice she'd used on me the first night we met. She said, "He's not just staying on the couch." And that was that. I don't know what her sister said in return. I didn't ask. And her ex, he stopped showing up. Maybe because he realized she wasn't alone anymore. Maybe because she stopped being afraid. We made new routines. I fixed the porch light for real. She let me paint in the little sunroom out back that she never used before. One morning, she passed me my coffee and said, offhand, "I can't imagine the place without your mess now." I don't think she meant to say it out loud. She did that sometimes. Let the truth slip out like it was something accidental. But the truth with her never was. And me? I grew up. Fast. Not in a dramatic way. Just enough. Enough to realize that loving someone older isn't about chasing danger or rewriting your youth. It's about learning to hold space. To listen without fixing. To know that someone else's fear doesn't mean you did something wrong. It means you're standing close enough to see them clearly. I don't know when we crossed the line. Maybe we never did. Maybe the line moved with us, day by day, until it wasn't a line anymore. Just a slow, steady unfolding. The funny part is, I came to that house to fix something broken. Porch light, maybe. A sense of safety. I thought I was the one giving. But Ella gave me something back I didn't know I'd been looking for. The feeling of being wanted. Not for what I could become, or what I could offer, just for who I already was. Now, some mornings, she reaches for my hand before she opens her eyes. And some nights, when she double-checks the locks, she smiles at herself for doing it. And I know, truly know, she doesn't feel broken anymore. She feels seen. And that's all I ever wanted to give her.